Dig on America.
The media said what? Ha, 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 ha.
Dig on America.
You are fake news.
Last call. Last call. Last call. Last call.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Last Call with your host, Lourin Hubbard. I am back in the studio this week. I took a little break. We're trying to do some stuff to get some other progressive candidates to run for office and get elected here in my neck of the woods here in California, Central Valley. So I was taking a little break to talk to some candidates and try to convince people to run last week. And so thank you for my co-host Brent for holding down the fort. But this week I am back, and joining me this week, I just got to tell you, I am super excited for the guests that we have for you this week. Joining me in the co-host chair is Jason Dutch, who I'm sure most of you recognize from time on Dig on America and other projects that you're doing. Dutch, what's up? How are you?
What's up, my man? Happy to be here for a sec.
Nice. And then, not that Dutch isn't great, but I'm just kind of fanboyish.
I'm not.
Yeah. Over the other two guests that we have joining us today. The first lady that I will introduce, Amane Badhasso, is running for Congress in Minnesota's 4th district, and I am just so impressed by the work that you are doing in the Great White North, as they call it in Minnesota. First of all, Black people. I live in California because I like the sunshine. I don't know that I can live in a place with all the snow, but let alone do all the work and be involved as you are. So thank you for joining us today. And then the other guest that we have in studio is my older sister. She's running for Congress, holding it down in Tennessee's 7th district. Is it 7th, 5th, 7th? What did I say? 7th. The 7th. Okay. Is my big sister Odessa Kelly is joining us today, and so I'm super excited. Let's get into it. The first thing I wanted to cover and kind of talk about and get your guys' opinion on it, and Amane, I'll start with you, is this kind of, we just celebrated the 57th anniversary of the signing of the Voting Rights Act. And I just think of the time we were I was sending out tweets yesterday celebrating it, but at the same time, I felt a little bit like, damn, we're having a Voting Rights Act celebration of 57 years, but it, in its current state, who is it really protecting? What is your take on where we kind of are with the voting rights?
You were breaking a little bit. Sorry.
Go ahead, Amane.
My take's on voting rights, the legislation, right?
Yeah, the Voting Rights Act.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
Voting Rights Act. Where we
Sorry,
are
we had a
with
little sound snafu there.
Oh, no worries. I heard that part. It's unfortunate that we have to be in 2022 and still talk about some of the most important fundamental rights in this country. But it's also not surprising, right? We have a Senate full of majority over 70 old white men who want to maintain the status quo and can keep things as they are, which is why a lot of these important legislation that gets through the House never makes it to the Senate. And of course, if it doesn't make it past the Senate, then we are in trouble. I see this as an organizer, right? We have a very active district in District 4. We're majority Dem, but there's still a lot of challenges that a lot of folks face. And of course, when you look at some other states across the country, especially with the current radical Supreme Court, it's great, but we shouldn't stop here, right? We have to make sure that we are continuously ensuring that everybody has access to the ballot. In a lot of states, right, you have folks who are still unable to vote, right, across this country. We can't call it fully a democracy so long as there are constant attacks on voting rights. I think that's great, but I think we have a long way to go, which is why we constantly talk about the fact that we need to send more community leaders, community organizers to Congress, because we know regardless of what happens today, they're continuously going to attack voting rights. They're continuously going to do everything they can to keep Black folks from voting, minorities from voting. And so this is an ongoing work, which is why I'm committed to always organizing, right? Whether you're in Congress or not, if organizing is not your top priority, especially in the current state that we're in, I think we're in trouble. And so great, but we have to be on high alert, as is the case with everything across this country. Look at women's rights, for example, right? And so we can't take a back seat. We have to continuously organize.
Odessa, what's your take on where we are? Oh, go ahead, Judge.
Well, I want to ask kind of a follow-up question. And actually, if Odessa, if you want to take this, or Amane, it doesn't matter. When you hear from someone who might be, like, I like to call them Joe Schmo in the middle, right? Like they're generally conservatives, but they don't really like, they see themselves as a centrist, right? And they say, well, I don't understand what all this is about voting. Everybody has access to voting. Like, what do they want from us? Like, I think a lot of people don't get it. How do you break down that that story to kind of get that message across to Joe Schmo in the middle, that there are people who are genuinely disenfranchised when it comes to the constitutional right of voting?
Well, Amane, you can follow up, but first of all, I would vote for you if I was there. So the first thing, we need more organizers, sitting in these seats of power. But yeah, to answer your follow-up question, first of all, I would inform them of their privilege, because that is one of the most unnerving thing to me. I've had the conversation a lot about people who say that they're swing voters, and as an African American, there's no way I could ever be a swing voter. All I can do is be a Democrat and then try to improve the Democratic Party until we create another party, that is more accurate what, progressives where they want to be. But I think with that said, I don't do a lot of arguing and trying to persuade people out of that, because most of the time they just want to have justification to keep themselves in that privilege to be able to swing back and forth. So
yeah,
that's the honest answer I can give you.
Yeah, I was going to say that kind of piggybacks into a topic that I wanted to cover because I have two great organizers here with me today. And one of the things is that there's no really kind of an organizing or a grassroots infrastructure I know there wasn't one here in California, which is surprising, but in other districts and other states that are really dedicated to electing Democrats. And so I'm wondering, what we saw with Sister Stacey Abrams in a state like Georgia, which is traditionally, when I think of like Democratic strongholds, that is not the state I think of. What has kind of been your take on how you can bring the Democratic Party with you in a state like Minnesota, for example, or a state like Tennessee, which I also don't think of as a Democratic stronghold? Amane, I'll go ahead. I'll start with you.
Yeah, I do want to say that I have to do a lot of persuasion in my district. We have majority progressive folks of color, over 40% folks of color in St. Paul. And then I have Washington County, which, to your point, is a lot of in the middle. A lot of folks who will tell you I'm a conservative, but I'm going to vote Dem. And so the one argument I always make is, for folks who don't know, I'm a refugee from Ethiopia. I come from a militarized dictatorship country, right? We talk a lot about the Horn of Africa being, lack of democracy, etc. To me, a democracy is a country where folks have access to voting rights. And the fact that we're having a conversation in 2022 about the need to pass or having passed Voting Rights Act should concern us. What we have seen over the past many years and throughout American history is there are states and a lot of folks who are committed to disenfranchisement, right? We see it every day, whether it's a Democratic district or a Republican district. And so for me, for us to say that we have a healthy democracy, we have to make sure we take that issue on. And systemically, we're not there yet. So I always make the argument that if you are a true believer in a democracy, then you cannot believe that you should be the only one that has access to the ballot. And given the history of this country, we can do better. The other argument is, we often talk about in our state of Minnesota about Minnesota Nice, and the fact that we are, a thriving democracy here, when really, I don't know if you've been following my race, but throughout the caucus and conventions, where we had one of the largest turnouts of folks of color, particularly immigrants, in the caucus and conventions. There were folks within, that were volunteering for the party that went down the list of every African name and called them and said, did you actually mean to participate? Within our own party. And a lot of folks were intimidated. They're like, okay, I'm participating for the first time. I don't feel safe. Somebody's calling me from a New York number. And so I have seen firsthand what happens in our great state of Minnesota, where a lot of folks know us for higher turnout, that there's still disenfranchisement efforts, especially when you challenge the status quo. And so for me, a healthy democracy is one where we're doing everything we can to press our legislators to actually pass those important laws, but to press them to organize, right? When we pose serious challenges to incumbents, what we're saying is they're too DC and not focused in their district. By that, we mean they're not mobilizing, they're not galvanizing, and they're not empowering people to actually believe in America, right? Believing in America means that we have folks participating at every level, from city council, state house, state senate, to obviously at the congressional level. And when you look at my district, majority of the voters are suburban white voters. We have a large portion of folks who are Black, Brown, Indigenous, who are immigrants who do not participate, which is why my race has been interesting, because we've been getting those folks to actually participate and concerned a lot of status quo, insidery, maybe moderate / conservative Democrats, right? And so whether they're comfortable or not, when somebody actually shows up in these spaces, they're going to have to deal with it. So I'm sort of a person that states, whether they're pressuring you to not participate, you have to participate, right? That's the only way we can actually strengthen our democracy. That's the only way we can actually have the important wins that we have. And you have to look at the numbers, who's actually voting, who actually has accessibility to the ballot. And so my focus would be really getting those folks to actually participate and to actually believe in our democracy, but to also let those folks in the middle know, regardless of what you believe, everybody has the right and the ability to participate. That would be my approach.
And Odessa, I got the same question to you. I always got the question of like, okay, so you're a progressive Democrat. Why don't you join a third party or start something else? Like, why are you still a Democrat is always the question that I get. And then it was kind of like, well, because I'm rocking with the Democrats now. I think it's the party I associate with the most, and I'm going to pull them along. How have you handled kind of the issues that seem to be when I go into these spaces? It's always like, oh, I'm they always want to label us as progressive or this Democrat or that Democrat, and I'm just kind of like, hey, we are Democrats. How are you taking that on?
Well, I mean, so Democrats is essentially the overall theme or feeling of a Democrat are people who are going to intentionally take care of their neighbor, or do well by their neighbor and the people, everyone. And I think that I'd push back on a little bit about the organizing part, right? I think the machine of the Democratic Party has been organizing and that's why we're in this position that we're in since the 60s, back the 40s. I think the issue is that we're in a very different time now. We have a lot of rich individuals who we call the establishment, who are just left of, outwardly saying the word nigga, and keeping people in immense poverty. And that is what we have, and they are the people that have become traditionally the people that we put in power in the Democratic Party. You know, the type of people who were born rich and show up to your church only on Sundays during election season, you know, and they do enough to smile in your face and to keep you from like really like rioting in the streets. And that's why I say for them to name us progressive isn't, you know, it's, I'll take the label, but think about it. I'm called a progressive because I don't want people to die in the street. I'm called a progressive because I want people to get paid, you know, the dignity, you know, for what they're worth. I don't want them to get their paychecks to be stolen. If that is a progressive thought, then this country is in trouble. You know, I have been called a progressive because I want people to be fed, regardless of whether they have money or not. It's not like we're doing any complex things. Taking care of the earth is a progressive. That is insane, you know. So we need to think about how far, you know, to the right technically this whole like measurement stick is, you know, and then what we're doing is actually just like righting the ship. And I think that you know, that's my stance and where we are on the party, you know. And I have a lot of respect for the people in the Democratic Party. We just have to break that mechanism that, you know, what's really happening is people are abandoning the base of the Democratic Party, which has always been working class people, you know, to fill their pockets and to sell out to lobbyists and all these other people. And that can't happen anymore. We have to start, you know, building legislation that has the most harmed people at the center of it. And I mean, that's simply what it is. And people just try to make it complex so they can stay in these positions of power.
You know, that's a great segue into the topics that I had with a friend driving down to Los Angeles this past weekend. And I was talking, I don't know how the conversation got there, but we started talking about the topic about how I did not vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Sorry, I did not.
Who you vote for?
I actually wrote in myself.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I would make a better president than either one of them.
You know not to talk about this when I'm on the show. You know not to talk about this because I will go on for 7 hours.
I know. But it's just so like my whole thing was like I could not do this woman. I understand everything that she did. I get it. I know. I'm a Bill Clinton fan. I get it. But the carrying hot sauce in her purse and talking about liking fried chicken and doing the nay with people, I was just like, you got to be kidding me. I could not do it. For the fact that, you know, the very kids that she was talking about in the 90s, of these latchkey kids who's single parent, if you don't want me to be on the street, my single mom had to take her ass to work. So that left a lot of free time for me to just be out hanging out, running in the streets and stuff, I guess was what they'd say. But we were just like playing street hockey and other things. But anyway, like the super predator label, that was me that she was talking about. So I took that personally. And I could not vote for a person who was like calling me a super predator. But I am now thinking of how we get back to this. And I think the answer is organizing on the grassroots level. How do we get back to people thinking of us as the party that is taking care of people, that has plans for not only for taking care of your grandma and grandpa, but taking care of you and taking care of your children on all generational levels. You know, what is your organizing background? How has that helped you in your race in Minnesota? Amane, we'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just going to actually jump into the fact that, you know, one of the things that I think about is when we say we're progressives, we're completely rejecting corporate-backed donations and special interest in Washington, right? And so I think that's a segue as to why I wanted to run. Prior to this, had absolutely zero interest in you know, actually being an elected office, right? I wanted to be a community organizer. I saw tremendous success from that in terms of community empowerment, etc. But when I came here, actually, when I was a refugee in Kenya for quite some time, majority of my life, actually, that's where I grew up in the slums of Kenya, and started organizing my second weekend here. So I started at 13 years old. Much of my work between 13 to 17 was a lot of human rights organizing, but I got involved with youth organizing, youth leadership, have worked with the party for over 10 years on and off with different candidates. And so I'm St. Paulite through and through. And I say that because community organizing isn't just a professional career for me, right? It's what we do to create joy, not only in politics, but amongst our communities. Come from a community where you kind of take care of each other, right? If your auntie's in trouble, your other auntie's taking care of her, right? We have that kind of circle, and organizing allowed me to do that on a broad scale. And so when I was running for office and I was talking to folks about the fact that we need a member of Congress that will bring investments into communities, that will actually fight for Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, for racial justice, right? And a lot of folks at the time were like, you're running against a fellow progressive member of Congress. Mind you, my opponent, Congresswoman Betty McCollum, has been one of the most corporate defense industry funded candidate in U.S. Congress. She has voted to increase the defense budget 22 times, giving them an additional $30 billion. And she's not a member of the Progressive Caucus. She has not been outspoken, especially when we had a reckoning on racial justice right here in the Twin Cities, right? One of the worst disparities in the country in terms of income inequality, home ownership gap, disparities when it comes to education. And meanwhile, we've had a member of Congress that has only passed 2 bills that she signed, that she had passed into law. One of them was renaming a post office. And so as an organizer who's been organizing in this community, mind you, a working class organizer, because you don't make enough as an organizer to not be working class, having seen so many people around me struggle, having struggled myself, where constantly I have been unable to make ends meet, whether it's paying thousands and thousands out of pocket for medical care. And meanwhile, she's talking about how she's bringing billions of dollars into the district. I'm like, where? We have small businesses down on the east side, etc. And so for me, it wasn't new. The issues that we were talking about are the issues that a lot of folks across our district have always wanted. And, as an organizer, it made sense to put myself out there and to run. And I don't know if you guys know, but we've been able to raise close to $900,000 in this race, all of it from working class folks, all of it from, folks who were chipping in 50, the folks who were chipping in their savings, because they have been waiting for a very long time for somebody that understands their concerns and issues. And so people-powered politics is that. It's not the fact that they're, the most perfect candidate, right? They're supporting the issues they care about. They know that I'm going to show up, right? I've been showing up my entire life. They've seen me grow up. And so I think that's the kind of politics we have to operate under, where the voters themselves take ownership of the campaign, contribute to the campaign, show up every day for the campaign, because they know that they can call you and hold you accountable. You can't just go to DC when you're grassroots funded and basically be a bench warmer. You actually have to deliver, because these people are investing in your campaign when really they're investing in themselves and their families. And so the power of being a grassroots funded candidate, the power of being a progressive, is really all about being accessible and being the person that they can actually hold accountable, right? When you send the millionaires there, when you send the folks that are fully funded by these corporate PACs, they don't have to be accountable to the folks they represent, right? They know they're not going to come to you to ask for money every 2 years when they're actually up for re-election. And so it's about accessibility. It's about knowing they can hold you accountable. It's about knowing that you've been showing up countless of times, not just during election cycles, right? Not just showing up to church services a week before your election, but actually being present in the community. I think that's my issue. And that I brought up the Hillary Clinton thing because of the person that you were running against. She gives me those kind of vibes, and I'm just kind of blah. But if my partner Brent was here, he would push back on you a little bit on the corporate PAC money thing, because he is a person that is like, his whole thing is like, I am with you. I think money in politics is the worst, but I think Democrats are handicapping themselves by not, we can't change things unless we get elected. And if someone wants to give me money, I will take it in order to win and then change it. It doesn't mean I have to answer their call. It doesn't mean this or that. But you got to run every 2 years, and there's a lot of money. They're going to throw money at you regardless if you are actually standing up and fighting for working class families. We have a political system where oligarchs and those folks who own corporations will continuously invest in the things that matter to them. And we know Washington's about priorities, right? And so you want to pass the Green New Deal, you have to take on fossil fuel industries. They're not going to stop, right? Unless you're doing it in 2 years, which would be phenomenal, but we know that's not how it's going to work.
Right. Odessa, let me bring you into the conversation here, just centered around kind of what you've seen in your district in Tennessee as a I know we kind of went through this ordeal most of the year and the summer with redistricting and what the district was going to look like and how it was going to be split. What are you kind of seeing on the ground? How's your organizing background helped you talk to people, constituents in your district? And how are you kind of like doing what I think the opposite of the Democratic Party at large has done, which is to get people excited about voting for you specifically?
Well, I mean, the gerrymandering of our district sucked. God, it sucked. You know, for those who didn't know, I was running against a Blue Dog Democrat, Jim Cooper. He's been in office since I was born. And you know, we just Nashville needed more accurate reflection of who we are as a city, and we wanted someone who was like actually going to fight for our needs, you know, and try to get some things done. And it's not to say Jim Cooper's a bad guy. He's just like he's always like the last person to do the right thing, you know. And then you know, come February, our racist, you know, state legislature, they chopped up Nashville in their last attempt to like, you know, try to keep hold of the or try to take back hold of the House. So they chopped Nashville from 1 congressional seat to 3 that are Republican leaning. So I am now running in District 7 against Mark Green, you know, is one of the worst congressmen that we have. He's anti-immigrant. He's horrible. He's the most homophobic, most transphobic individual we have in Congress. It's the guy that tried to put a law out to, you know, outlaw just about damn near anything that had anything to do with Muslims or.
Come on, how do you really feel?
People.
How do you really feel about the guy?
Yeah, he's such a ball. That's how I really feel. You know? But with that said, you know, I think me being an organizer, like ditto to everything that Amane just said. You know, I think I came at it differently. I was not thinking about this at 13 years old. You know, at 13, I was hooping. I was still trying to go, you know, I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to play at UConn or UT, you know. And then I'm like, if that don't work out, I'll drive, you know, I don't know, the Yoshimobile for Mario Kart. So I was not on her level at 13 years old, you know. But I think that's been my life. I worked at a community center for almost 14 years. I was a civil servant, you know. I was in leisure services, the part of government that we actually like, and I was really good at it. I was really Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, flag football. You know, I was really good at hanging out with our seniors in the morning time and learning how to play cutthroat spades and all those things, right? And then making intergenerational programs. That was my job, and I could retire doing that shit. And it was the fact that I was living check to check. I'm on the front lines of poverty every day. I see the school to prison pipeline. It's like the community I grew up in, you know, happening. And I was tired of going to court for kids who were stealing cars, but no one asked the question why. It's because the asshole landlord just raised their rent by 3 times, and he didn't heard this rumor that you can get 2 stacks if you go steal a car. You know, yeah. It's not like you just woke up and like, I'm going to steal a car today. It's like, how can I help my family? And when you have people in concentrated poverty making desperate situations, you know, and making decisions because of desperate situations is going to constantly happen, you know. And that's what led me to be going into organizing work, because we never really had an advocate who actually came from these communities and it was a plug into these communities. We had good people trying to do good work around them, but they never actually plugged into those actual communities. And that's just how my reputation grew, of being actually able to like plug in and like make people actually grow a voice of the things that were happening on the front lines. I've been doing that for 7, 8 years. We signed that community benefits agreement in 2018. It's considered one of the strongest in the country. You know, that gave me the opportunity to like go around the country, because I never got to travel before, you know, outside of college, you know, but hell, I was just seeing, you know, the college and the airport. So now I got to get plugged into communities. Same shit is happening in Nashville, because I thought it was just us, you know. I went and saw Satul, CTUL. That's it's an organizing group that's across the street in Minneapolis. But and I got to go to. I've been to San Jose. I've been to San Diego. I've been to all through the Central Valley. I've been to Oakland. I've been to LA. I've been to New Mexico. I've been to Detroit.
You didn't come say hi to me when you were in the Central Valley.
I didn't know your ass. I know you.
You should have known you were going to know me.
Hey, you should say that, because if Odessa knows you, she will say, she'll hit you. Hey, I'm here. What's up? What's good?
Yeah,
it's one of those. I didn't know she was going to come knock at 9 p.m. at night.
But no, I went through all those things, and it's the exact same issues everywhere, And when it comes down to me organizing and have to talk to constituents, I don't have to talk from a theoretical standpoint in some way Amane doesn't. I've been here and carried receipts and doing this work, So it's literally just reiterating the things that you would do on the organizing standpoint. Honestly, the thing that I've been doing, because I carry this name of progressive, I've been organizing myself to ingratiate myself with the establishment class and get to know all the people who are in the CPC, and some of the other OGs, so they can know me personally and not have just this idea for whatever, trauma someone else may have caused them.
Yeah, that's a super interesting point, Lourin. I want to ask a quick question of both of these ladies. So, and this is more of a statement, but I'm going to pass it off to you guys for your thought. When you look at what the progressive platform is, now there are different progressives who have slightly different platforms. I don't want to, generalize too much, but in general, it seems like Medicare for all, or single payer healthcare, universal healthcare, however you want to, whatever name you want to throw on that, right? People have slightly different versions, but we'll call it single payer for the point of this. A living wage, which, by the way, I think 15 is too low, but anyway, a living wage, and really maybe the other, obviously, abortion rights. We don't have to worry about that too much with the most Democrats are there on that, but the other one is money out of politics. Like all three of those things: money out of politics, single payer healthcare, and a living wage. All those things poll at 65 to 80%.
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out why they're calling you two radicals. When you support something that has 65 to 75 to 80% polling with people at the mall, but you actually say, you know what? When this stuff polls this high, it makes me wonder why we don't have it. So maybe I'll run for Congress and actually make sure we get it. And they call you a radical who wants to upset the system, and then blame you for Hillary's loss in 2016. Like, can you speak to that, please, ladies? Because I'm super confused. I don't understand it.
I mean, I understand it from this lens, right? We have one of the worst income inequalities in most of the so-called developed nations, right? That's for a reason. We have a lot of corporate power in our politics. I mean, we're talking about like oligarchs who are controlling corporate media, who are controlling members of Congress, members of Senate, folks in Washington. And so for them, right, it's preserve the status quo, make as much money as possible. Doesn't matter what happens to the middleman or woman, right, or et cetera. And so long as those powerful folks, so long as we have so much money in our politics, Citizens United, right, is a great example. It's not the only example. It's a great example of how many things have gone wrong with our politics, right? So long as that corporate machine controls our political system, and they do, and they will, as long as folks are, not electing our radical progressives into office, I'll be very honest with you, things are not going to change. And this is what I mean by, regardless of whether we, take a few corporate PAC money and get in there and win, they're going to come after us really hard.
Absolutely.
After progressives really hard, right? They want to maintain their place in America. It's been great for the billionaires that have been benefiting off the global pandemic, that have been benefiting off of Black lives, right? That have been benefiting off of working class folks who are barely making ends meet. Nothing's going to change. We have to be bold, and we have to be in this fight for the long haul, knowing that they're going to fight back. How do we actually empower people to, on a mass scale, right? On a mass scale, take on this corrupt political system? And so for me, it was never an easy endeavor to go up against an incumbent that touts that she's a progressive despite only taking corporate PAC money, despite a lot of folks in my district, right, who are like, we read that she's a progressive. Like, yeah,
taking oil, big pharma,
right? Like, we're
health
talking about mass media, right?
Yeah.
Run and, bought off by
She's-
corporations. And so whoever gets that messaging, we have to be able to make sure that we're getting enough working class folks to be continuously engaged so that we can kill that narrative. And I got to tell you, it's going to take some time. It's not going to be overnight.
Yeah, if I could just add to that too, I think it's also just making sure that we get better with civic education. You know, you can't hold accountable what you don't know. And that happens way too often, especially in the South. You know, one of the most scariest things I think for rich people, you know, and a lot of people in power during the pandemic was not the fact that damn near 1 million people lost their lives. You know, it's not the outrage over George Floyd. It is the fact that people had the time to actually absorb what was happening. And like you're just talking about, Jason, make good cognizant decisions about what is going on. Because when people are moving, working a 9 to 5, and just how we've built culture, right? All this shit's been pushing our brains. You know, some of this stuff is bad for us. Think about the movies we used to watch in the 80s and 90s where we cheered for this behavior.
Exactly.
You know, so we have to learn these habits as a society, you know, and I think that is a part of it as well. But people having the time to like actually think about how they make better decisions, and that is what happened, you know, in this last presidential election. Has scared the shit out of a lot of people, you know, which is why you got people like Manchin and Sinema who are holding votes up, who are probably actually, you know, the front man for what's probably 20 or 30 other people standing behind them who just afraid to, you know, to be low and boisterous about it themselves.
Yeah, and Amane, I know you have to go. So the last kind of topic that I wanted to cover while you were here, and of course we'll get into it with Odessa, is you know, I had the opportunity. Odessa and I were at an event earlier this year with Keith Ellison, who was one of our speakers. And for those that don't know, Keith Ellison is the Attorney General in Minnesota, who presided over the Derek Chauvin case and everything that's happened in that community in regards to race in America. And I'm kind of thinking, you know, do you think that this is an issue that should be addressed? Should we talk about race in America? Should we have, you know, I feel like I've seen like 3 or 4 2020 Dateline episodes about race in America, but is it something? Can we really have? Should we really even talk about racial justice when it comes to candidates running for office? Is it something that Congress and the government itself should take on?
How do you talk about America without talking about race in America? You know,
I know, but you have people like it gets so upset about the CRT and this and that, and
you have to talk about race in America. This is a country built on genocide and slavery of Black folks, right? And we have had countless of opportunities across this country to address, you know, we're not just talking about the policing in America, which has been a prime example of what happens when we have state-sanctioned violence against Black bodies that continue to go unquestioned. But we're also talking about mass inequalities across this country. When you look at home ownership gaps, right? Look at the number of folks who are African-American who have lived throughout this nation for generations and how much access they were actually able to have to wealth, right? So we have to talk about race in America. And this is what I mean as an immigrant, as somebody who came here. You know, one of the first things I did was read the Federalist Papers, by the way, which is a shock to a lot of folks. And so it's like, this is... Wow. For a lot of folks who are, whether they're in a refugee camp, whether they're abroad, they're talking about America, right? The beacon of hope. But when you observe America and live in America, you learn that it's a completely different story, especially for a Black person. And so we have a long way to go before we can say that America has delivered on racial justice. We have a lot of work to do. And so any candidate regardless of whether you're a Black woman like me or whether you're even a white candidate and you're a progressive and you're talking about building economic, racial, and environmental justice, and you're ignoring race as a conversation, doesn't cut it for me. And so we have to talk about race, and we have to talk about how do we take on mass incarceration in this country? How do we take on policing in this country that has disproportionately destroyed Black lives across this country? How do we talk about the war on drugs, right? That hasn't gone away. We have folks that have lost their right to a life of dignity in millions, particularly Black African-American men, which led to complete devastation for Black families right across this country. How do we solve a lot of those issues? We can't not solve it, and we can only solve it once we start to have those important conversations and take on systemic racism, which we have a lot of work to do in order for us to say that we have a country that is solely built on preserving and protecting racial justice in this country.
Yeah,
I think you got the point.
I start sounding like a conspiracy theorist
I got a little sensitive
when I talk about that, like this issue, because it's like, it's exactly like you said, like the mass incarceration movement leading to the like decimation really of really the Black family. And I sound like a conspiracy theorist when I say that it was on purpose, because who was funding groups like Martin Luther King or SNCC or Malcolm X was the Black family. And so how do we go about dismantling that income source? Is I de-industrialize high school, so where you can't learn automotive technology, you can't learn craftsmanship and all this stuff with your hands. So if I am a Black man and I want to provide for my family, how do I don't have the skills now to do that, coupled with the introduction of this drug. So I can either trying to hustle and sell this drug, or I can take this drug to cope with the lack of opportunity that I have. And that is what the and now see, I get.
Yeah. I want to add a couple things. And so oftentimes when we talk about this issue, folks are like, well, you're saying there's so many things wrong with America. There are so many positive things going on in America, right? We're talking about the fact that we can do better, right? There's a lot of progress left to be made. And I think for folks, when they hear this side of ours and me getting sensitive about a topic that I feel like, is so important, right? We can't have a democracy so long as Black lives can't lead a life of dignity, right? We can't say that we have a democracy so long as folks are being killed, or their livelihoods are being taken away, and we still have a problem in this country where race is a factor on whether you get to live or not, right? So we're talking about what we need to actually have the America that is fair and just. And so I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. Well, Odessa, go ahead and give us your take, and then we'll let Amane do her wrap up, and then it'll just be you and I getting on it.
I got you, Amane. I'll be following your campaign from here on out. So, I'm glad to have been here and met you, sis. But yeah, everything that she's saying, everything in this country is wrapped in race, and like the construct of race has probably the original onset of all the fucking mental stress and mental health issues that all of us have. We got all these like even how we talk about it. How many times have y'all seen people who will do whatever they can not to say the word Black or someone was being racist? Like we even said that they believe the lie. No, they don't damn lie. Some of them insurrectionists, they got master's degrees. These people smarter than that. 1 out of 3 of them was in the military. These people are cognizant and know exactly what it is. They just racist. That's all it is, right? And the fact that we can't get over just saying it, calling it what it is a mental health issue. The impact of slavery didn't just impact Black people, it impacted everyone. The fact that you think that you have an in right to privilege of those type of the things that we were just talking about it's a mental health issue that needs to be checked. There are people here in Tennessee right now, right? They're voting against their interests because in the back of their head, as long as they're better than the Black person beside them, that's all they need in life. So they'll go on suffering with all their medical issues. They'll still live check to check. They'll allow the person they vote for to shut down the economic engine in your community. They'll all these things based off of that paradigm. So race is 100% absolute a part of all of the constructs that we see and it happen day in and day out basis. This country was built off of it. It's ridiculous. You know, it was what year was it when they were like, okay, our numbers are starting to deplete. Hey, Irish, y'all white too. Come on, join the party.
Yeah.
You know, if you remember the movie
definition.
Gangs in New York when it was New Amsterdam, that's one of the things that they talked about. You know, and how that coalition of whiteness, you know, really started to bond and form. So it's 100%.
I don't like to talk about Gangs of New York because really it was a great movie, but what's her name's performance in that movie was just terrible. So I don't like that.
Daniel Day?
No, Daniel Day-Lewis carried the film, but
I don't even remember anybody else in the movie.
Cameron Diaz was. I couldn't tell you if it was her Irish accent would come in and out, and she tried to get it out of my chair. It was just like not good. So, but it was a really great movie to highlight what you're talking about. But then I started my academic brain or my like movie brain was like, Cameron Diaz in that movie. Cameron Diaz in The Mask, fantastic. But in Gangs of New York, not so much. But
well,
just keep it light.
I know Amane's got to wrap up, but it is absolutely an issue that we see, you know, not in just the criminal justice, but in money and how we deal with each other, you know, and how we perceive one another. Any of y'all see that? Was it Terrell Owens thing that happened just a day ago with Karen? He went to his mailbox, you know, and it shit escalated quickly. You know, by the time police got there, she crying and shit. So, I mean, race, absolutely. She justified her actions by saying, well, you're a big black man. Come on now, bro. You know. All right, Amane, do your thing. We're going to let it wrap up.
Okay. So, Amane, I know by now we're heading towards the end of this election. You got your election day is Tuesday. Tuesday. Yeah. August 9th. So by now you should be well versed. Go ahead and give us your 1 minute candidate speech.
Absolutely. I am an organizer. I am a working class woman. I believe that we need to send folks to Washington that will actually fight for working class families. And that can only happen when we have grassroots funded, people powered politics where people are engaged. They're optimistic about they're going to be able to hold somebody accountable. And I've been in this race for about a year. We have been able to build a broad coalition of folks across this district, and folks are ready for a new generation of leadership that will not be bench warmers in Washington, but will actually fight and take on this corrupt system that has been leading our political system for a very long time and actually get Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, racial justice, environmental justice, and economic justice, and ensure that we're able to deliver for working class families. I'm committed to that. We'll always be committed to that, which is why I want folks across District 4 and across the country to support our movement, because what we do here matters across the entire country. And I appreciate you for giving me the platform.
Man, where's my... I'm going to donate right now.
Hit up the Act Blue. Oh, thank you, Amane, for coming on to the show. It was a pleasure.
Beautiful conversation. I'm so honored.
I'm looking for great results on Tuesday.
Thank you.
I'm rooting for you too, sis. I'd be honored to stand beside you on the
appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks for doing this. All right, so I'm now going one-on-one with my big sis Odessa. First of all, I got to tell you, having spent the weekend in LA for my daughter's birthday, she went to go to Universal Studios. So I was like, okay. But we went to a soul food place called Fixin's, and it's right next to Crypto.com Arena, and it was just so homey and it felt so good. And one of the things that was in there, they had a big painting, and it said, I'm trying to think back, use my memory. So it said survival and ingenuity and bravery. These are the essential ingredient, and creativity, or these are the essential ingredients in what has come to be known as soul food. And I read that and I was like, that is almost the quintessential Black experience in America is through our food, in the mix of our experiences here in this country, with our food that we eat. And I'm wondering, being from Tennessee, do you see that kind of marriage of the culture? I think American culture is Black culture. How do you see that coming through?
Yep. Absolutely, to everything you just said.
Apparently, what is your last name, everybody? I thought I said it, and you have a sign behind you, but for folks that don't know the chat.
Yes, I don't know which way to move. Odessa Kelly. So, hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here and speaking with you. My name is Odessa Kelly. I am running in the Tennessee 7th. It is a gerrymandered district, but it's an opportunity for us to flip a red seat blue, like my man Lourin did, or it was attempting to do. So shout outs to you. I'm so proud of you fighting and speaking truth to power. And I am doing the exact same thing in Tennessee.
So let me get into this a little bit. So with everything that's happened, we talked a little bit about the kind of the challenge that was with these voting lines, with having districts drawn, and we talked about the kind of like the Voting Rights Act. If that was still around, would this even be an issue that's going on with your district? Tell us a little bit more about what happened with your district in the race, and would that even be an issue if we had a strong Voting Rights Act in this country?
Well, I don't know if the Voting Rights Act that we have, they stripped out Section 2 and Section 5. I don't know if that would protect us from gerrymandering, but with what was going to happen with, I think, the John Lewis Act, it would have protected us from gerrymandering districts. So basically, I told you what happened. They split the districts. I am now in a Republican-leaning district. So I have a third of Nashville in my district, and I have 13 other counties with it that span from Kentucky to Alabama, across Tennessee, the whole state. And the three major, it's insane. If any of you look at it, you can just Google Tennessee Congressional District redistricting or Tennessee 7 redistricting, and you'll see the picture. I mean, it's absurd, which is why all of our races are important, like Amane was talking about earlier. We've allowed a lot of these racist Republicans to take over our judicial seats at every level, and that's why we couldn't appeal here in Tennessee. Even on the state level, they appealed it and won, and the judge said they had to redraw it, which was surprising to us given who the judge was. Man, they moved 2 seats over, 2 people around.
Oh.
And it says there, So, I think that's when being an organizer really comes into play, and it's really helped me. Out of these 14 districts, several of them being very rural. The biggest 3 districts, of course, Davidson County, which is where Nashville is. You got over 700,000 individuals. You have Montgomery County, which Clarksville, right outside of Nashville, is. And that's where, since Nashville was full, everybody and mama been trying to move here, for the past 10, 15 years, ever since they showed Nashville, which is not an accurate, depiction. Nashville is 35% African-American. I think it's down a little bit now. It's like 33. But you can see no Black people in that film. But anyway, and I think
to be fair, I've been trying to move. To be fair, I've been trying to move to Nashville since season 1 of Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives. So I understand the sentiment.
Well, bring your ass on. We'll find out. But with that in Williamson County and having bits and pieces of it, those 3 together probably equal about 60% of the population of the whole district. So if we can win those 3 counties, we win this race. So and
is that kind of your path to victory going through?
Yeah, that's it. Yes, thank you for asking that. It absolutely is our path to victory. And it's still hard. It's still an uphill battle. But we're doing our due diligence. I've been very thankful to have, the backing and endorsement of groups as, Justice Democrats and Collective PAC, who we both, endorsed us, and Higher Heights and, Working Families Party and so many other groups, because they've been That's the only way we change this. You know, like it is the only way that we change this and get this to happen is if you back candidates in position, you know, who are in cities or seats like the one that I'm trying to take in the South. Because as the South goes, as the country goes, that's just the truth of it, you know. And we have to be able to like have some type of machine. And Stacey and them, they showed us what the model looks like. They were building that for 10 years. So a part of the thing that we're doing in our path to victory is making sure that we're building that infrastructure, you know, and we're doing that right now because regardless of whether I win or lose my race, in 18 months, Marsha Blackburn is gone. We're going to do our part to make sure that we add another, you know, progressive person to the Senate, you know, and we're doing our due diligence to shorten the time of how we flip Tennessee from what is called red, you know, to purple and blue, because technically Tennessee is not a red state. And it showed us that in the last election. It's a non-voting state. We're that oppressed state that she talked about, you know, that took away voting on Sundays. They got all this weird shit and how you have to vote now to make it very, very hard for people to have access to the ballot, you know. But when the federal government stepped in last year and said, because of the pandemic, we got 2 years ago, 1 million different ways for people to vote. Like in districts and in seats and precincts that we had been losing. When I say we, the Democratic or progressive or blue side have been losing by 20 or 30 points. All of them, we lost by 5 or 6 points. That lets us know that, you know, when people have the actual ability to go out and vote at their convenience and at their leisure, they make better choices. And so all of those things are path to victory.
And that's, you know, part of the disconnect I've seen and experienced is what happens on the DCCC side and where they choose to invest. I'll say with air quotes, invest in versus the like messaging branch that is the DNC and where they're trying to build coalitions at, because the DNC. For you know, my experience with it is they're trying to actually reach in and do deep canvassing and reach out to communities and people other than every 4 years. They're trying to build up the name recognition. But on the DCCC side, where the money goes to give to candidates, it's like, well, have you raised $500,000 on your own?
Absolutely.
Let us know when you get and maybe we'll. And it's like, well, I mean, if you were here and you got involved, we could actually win some races.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of not been the case. And I'm kind of wondering, with you saying absolutely, I'm kind of wondering if that's kind of been the case with you in Tennessee, where you're seeing like if we had this all in for Democrats in this, if we just pounded this area, we had people in here walking, we had ads on the air, we could win this. We could flip this. Is that kind of how your experience has been?
Yeah, I would say we'd be a shoe-in. I still think that we can win it, right? That's why I thank you for allowing me to come on here, because like when you don't, we have to scramble. It's a grassroots effort, you know, and it's more about it being people powered, you know, because we don't have the machine behind us, so to say, or the establishment machine, you know. And again, I think that's where being an organizer works, and trying to like cut in on that as well. You know, like I have met people from the DCCC and the DNC. I met them at Collective PAC. You know, Collective PAC, shout out to them. They have been wonderful. You know, like this organization that supports Black candidates, you know, across the spectrum has been amazing, and like holding me down and making sure that, you know, even the imposter syndrome will slip in sometimes, and I can call on Kevin or Stephanie or Quentin or any of these individuals that are part of their staff, and they got my back, you know, and so I truly appreciate all of them. But with that said, though, you know, they give me the access to like meet people who still are following up with me today and have been very honest. That is the equation that you talk about and how the machine works. And they think into their head like it is the best way for them to protect the seats that they have. And I'm like, man, some of them seats is trash, but that is their perspective of it, and they're the ones holding the bag. You know, so what? Well,
yeah, I mean, you know, we also have like you would think that a person who's the Speaker of the House would be invested in protecting the House majority, and yet we're finding out that their House Majority PAC has given millions of dollars to Republican candidates to highlight the most.
Crazy. Yeah, I don't like that strategy. And I think a lot of this has been a learning lesson for me as well. You know, Nancy Pelosi, Cory Booker, several other individuals have been to my state and raised millions of dollars, you know, and where I'm doing my best, you know, and that's a part of the establishment too. The establishment donor class in Tennessee has not given me $1. They don't like the fact that this black, 6 foot tall, very pretty, you know, dread wearing, queer, openly gay black woman is the person that the people chose to run for this seat. You know, I'm not their choice. And, you know, so like with that said, like we have to break this, like, you know, we got to break this mechanism, you know, and a lot of it is like what Amane was talking about with the corporate dollars coming in, you know, and that playing a big deal in it, you know, so woo,
as Lloyd said,
you know, because if I knew how to solve it, I'd be doing it right now. And I do think that solving it is us keep chipping away at it. You know, part of this campaign is me as teaching as many other people who I think are legit organizers, that when they get to that point to stop organizing or move into another part of organizing, come to elected politics, you know, because we need more people from our base to be in these positions of leadership. I got pissed as an organizer. We do all this work on the ground, you know, hand package it and send it to our elected officials, and they just drop the ball because they don't have our shared experiences of our urgencies and the shit that we're struggling through every day. And if they can't make money off of it, they ain't with it. If they can't secure a seat with it, they ain't with it. So, you know, that's got to change.
You're absolutely right. I was just at a listening session a couple of weeks ago with EPIC, which is Mayor Michael Tubbs's new outfit in ending poverty in California. We did a listening session with folks in our community here in Fresno, where I live, just telling us about their experience with poverty. And we invited guests that just members of the community, but also people in the advocacy space. And as a person who's like, you know, worked as an advocate for folks in our community, it is so, I am absolutely fed up to the point of like, I hate that we have to work so hard as advocates for folks in our community because there's not the policy change that would fill in the gap or increase the assistance that's going to them. And just getting those lessons of folks that were like, you know, we voted for this person for city council. We voted for this person as our mayor because they came to us and they said, you know, we recognize what you need. And at this point, I hate coming to these things because they already know. We've already told them what we want. We want parks. We want places for our kids to go. We want investment in us. And people only come to us when it's election time and they say, oh, well, what do you guys want? And act like they don't know when they get elected. We've told them multiple times. And so watching someone like you who's, you know, you've been in that place of organizing and you have that balance and to bring that experience with you and what people want into the policy sphere where those changes and those improvements can actually get made. Is one of the things one of the reasons I've been a big fan of the work that you're doing, and I'm just kind of you know, wondering if you could give us kind of, I know we are got a few minutes left here. I'm wondering if you could give us kind of like what your, you know, it's January 3rd. You've been sworn in now. What is kind of like one of the things that you are give us your things that you're going to work on as an elected official?
Yeah, I'm one of 435. I think the first thing I want to do is go meet the OGs. When people tell you I'm gonna go in, the first thing I'm gonna do is change the housing policy. No, the fuck you're not. You one of 435, and that cannot happen like that. You know, so let me be very honest with you. I want to go meet the OGs and learn how this game is working that we don't hear about, you know, because I know all the parliamentary rules. I just studied it. I know how it's supposed to happen, right? I know everything's supposed to happen on C-SPAN and like the culture of it. But, you know, it's like anything. Once you get onto a job, there's a actual way that things actually work. So, yeah, I want to go see Mama Water or Representative Waters. You know, I want to go meet Katie Porter. I want to go meet Clyburn and all the rest of them, even the ones, you know, that I might have like political differences with. You know, on our side, I ain't meeting with no Republicans. You know, I ain't with the whole bipartisan shit because they're insane. You know, but other Democrats, I want to meet with these individuals. You know, and like build some relationship because everything is political will. You know, I'm coming to Congress with what you said. I'm a person working in the community center that just happens to be a community leader and an advocate fighting for the American Rescue Plan harder than the elected officials in my city. How hard is it? Yes, the money needs to go into the hands of people. And I was like, well, shit, I might as well be in office. Everybody calling me anyway about their damn potholes. I'm like, I am not your elected official, you know? So, like, I'm feel you. Like, that's the reason why I'm here and I am running for the position. But I think going into office, that is the very first thing that I want to do. You know, I will be a part of the squad. I'll be a part of the Progressive Caucus, you know, and I'm hoping that like Amane and 25 other legit progressives, you know, are elected as well, because there's power in numbers and we can pull some Joe Manchin shit and be like, we ain't doing this till we get this. And we're going to hold everything fucking hostage until we get the things that will actually tangibly, you know, have a direct, immediate impact on the masses. You know, a lot of people, I hate to hear people too say, I need this in my district. When you go to Congress, you're supposed to be a countryman, not just a statesman. Every vote that you take has an impact on everybody in the country. Everybody in the country. And it's like your responsibility to make sure that the things that you do work for everyone, not just selfish shit or just the people in your district. You know, look out for them. But damn, like it's got to work for everyone, you know? So, yeah.
Absolutely true. Last thing I wanted to talk about was kind of what happened over Friday and the details that came out about Brittany Griner's case in Russia. And I am, you know, it reminded me, I thought to myself, dang, we have to be way more advanced than Russia. But it reminded me of that we got brothers and sisters here in America, first drug offense, and they're locked up for 17 years. She got 9 years on a marijuana possession, and you know, I think that's
it wasn't marijuana, it was hash. It was hash oil. You know, the amount
not even,
you know, it
yeah. But I'm, you know, it reminded me of this contrast between Russia and America, and surely we have to be better than them. But you know, we still have this, like Amane said, we still have this drug war going on here. I'm wondering if like you, what your kind of or your stance is on drugs in America and what we can do.
Yeah, legalize marijuana first of all, you know, and I think deeper in just legalizing marijuana, we should also legalize it in a way that when we monetize it, that the people been harmed or, you know, put in prison for it first should be the first ones to have the opportunity to build businesses out of it. You know, that's how I look at it. As far as like it being compared to like BG's situation is, I don't know. I first met Brittany Griner when she was 12, 13, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, I was playing in like, we're at a All-American tournament or something, just in like our free time. And they have like the junior risings and all that. And she was playing in, you know? And it was, you know, and I think that this is more than just a criminalization of marijuana. When we talk about BG, we're talking about a 6 foot tall, masculine leaning, you know, Black woman, and how this country views who's important and who's not, you know. And that's not to move away. I think it's very simple about me and marijuana, you know, like we need to give it out free to everybody in the Republican Party because they need to de-stress. They tripping for real, you know. So like shit. You know, give them some of that good gas I got out there in Cali, for real. But
the OG Kush,
the OG Kush, you know, they definitely need some of that. But we should legalize it, and then we should make sure that Black and brown communities have the opportunity to like monetize it before anyone else. You know, with all the bells. Has that
been a do you think you've gotten kind of traction from folks in the community about it? When I was going around, it was
even
like
in LA. In California,
I was gonna say,
go ahead.
When I was going around in canvassing, I actually came up to a person who was like literally had their like mason jar of weed out and was in the middle of rolling a fat blunt. And I asked him, "Hey, brother, you registered to vote?" And he said, "Nah." I said, I'm going out. I'm registering folks. You want to get registered? You know?" He said, "No, thanks. Why should I?" And I was like, the fact that you're doing this openly outside, that had policy change had to be, someone had elected had to say, yeah, we want to allow people to do this.
Yeah.
And so, and then we started talking a little bit, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, give me that paperwork." And so, I'm wondering, has that stance been? Have you seen any traction from it in helping your campaign?
About legalizing marijuana?
Yeah,
I think everybody knows. Yeah, I think everyone knows where I stand on it. We had to do a bunch of polling again when they blew up our district, because it's like you have to start your campaign over, right? Because they changed the whole like area of it, and a lot of people in rural areas like, shit, we want to legalize marijuana too. So I think the traction that I would use it for is to try to, like, I guess I am, if I'm doing any persuasion voting or trying to appeal to people who usually vote, Republican down the line, regardless of who the person is, I think that has been very helpful. Whereas like it's different with brothers in the hood, because like that mental stress and that oppression is layered with other shit. And the reason why he's like, nah, he just don't want to he just want to fly on the radar for a myriad of other reasons. It's probably because he's been with his whole life. And so I think, and I'm glad that happened. That's the work that I was doing before I even got here, is making sure that people were civically engaged they don't understand how Congress has a direct impact on their life. And Congress purposely wants to keep it that way. That's why I'm an advocate of End Citizens United, and get all of this money out of elections so that we can have more working and regular people running for this office who can make those connections.
Absolutely. Last question before I let you go is we got a whole bunch of things going on now that the Supreme Court has made it official, and this overturning of Roe, and now they're highlighting things like gay marriage, same-sex marriage, even contraceptives. Kind of what's your take on that? Do you think that's going to be a catalyst to jumpstart for your campaign? I know, like in places like that, I thought it wouldn't be, like Kansas that we got earlier last week. Was like, what? Does that kind of what's kind of your take on that? What's your experience been with it? Do you think it's gonna kind of help you out in your campaign?
I hope so. I felt so good, when to hear that they won, given to that their PVI score in that area, it was the same as the district that I'm running in, and like to hear like some of the strategies of what happened, and to know that a lot of the white women who voted against, to protect abortion usually wrote red down the line too, but they're like, this is a line too far, And one woman, I heard her talking on a radio show or something earlier today. She was like, the issue of Roe v. Wade and women's rights has really made her actually think and be more responsible, instead of just stepping in a ballot, because we think it's not hard. A lot of people, we have bad habits, and voting is, I used to vote on whoever my mama told me to vote on. It wasn't until I had children and it's really starting to impact my life that I really started to look at it from an adult lens and a responsible lens, and a lot of people don't have, and especially if you're white, even if you're working class, a lot of people don't think about that. I know so many people who are white and working class, and they're working at Walmart, and they think they're middle class just because they got a job. Like, what, girl? You are not middle, girl. And it's like, and so like, there's a lot of shit that's layered in that. But I do think it's going to help. We had our primary August 4th, and up and down the line, you have Democrats and people who are winning races in very red districts here in Tennessee, everywhere, And so, I think that, again, the shit that we hear about it's too, Democrats can't win, and this is the year Republican is narrative, let the people decide. And I have full faith in people here in Fresno and across this country, to step up, because us with common sense, we actually outnumbered them 3-4 to 1. We just got to stop being fearful and show up. When you stand up, are people going to stand against you? Yeah. But no, it's millions of us. Like me and Lauren's gonna stand there right beside you, and we got your back.
Absolutely. As long as I can bring a little drink you drink.
In your rainbow
It's
cup,
Sunday.
drink it.
That's right. It's my I got this at I marched in a pride parade with my campaign.
Yeah.
They were handing out koozies, so I was like, take one of those.
I miss you. I gotta come see you.
Man, you got to come out here because it is. Now that I got some spots for us to try. We will do karaoke again. I will not tell the show about our karaoke night for your birthday, which was fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, great
because
time.
you were truly singing. But Odessa, gonna tell us where we can find more information about you and give us your rap here.
Yeah, so thank you again for giving the opportunity to come in and speak on your show. Yo, just Google me. Google your girl, Odessa Kelly. I know I got on here Odessa the unicorn in here. My bad. It just pops up because I had that in for another thing. But my name is Odessa Kelly. As you can see, scrolling at the bottom, Odessa for Congress is the website. Check me out on Twitter and IG at Odessa Kelly TN. On Facebook, it's Odessa Kelly for Congress. Washington Post just did a really big write-up on me. There's a Vogue article out there about me that's really good, so
get out there and give money, guys. I know it's the
help
thing,
me help you,
but like exactly like these campaigns, as a person who is a former candidate, I can tell you these campaigns, when you give money to a person like Odessa, that goes straight into messaging and getting people in her district out to vote. And that is what we need. If all the topics that we've talked about today, people like Amane and Odessa, they need money to bring that message to the people in their district so we can get elected.
Absolutely.
We've talked about a whole bunch of shit that needs to change. If you're one of those people that are like sitting here like, oh, that is pretty bad, then $5, $10, $15. That's like one of the things I got to be honest with you. One of the things, so like, I actually ended up giving Bernie like over $1,000, and he was the only candidate. I think I gave Obama like $25 once. Yeah, just 25 because he was a brother. I was like, all right, that was the first campaign, but every other like campaign email I get, they ask for like $1,000 and up, and I'm just no, I don't know who you are or what you're about or any of this stuff. But like Bernie was the first because he was only at, hey, can you give me a 20? I'm like, dude, yeah.
Well, see, that's the thing of it. And I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because like dialing for dollars, because of how egregious it is with Citizens United saying that people can put unlimited amount of money, saying that corporations are people, has like made this insane. The person I'm running against, Mark Green, who voted against putting a cap on insulin. Anyway, this individual, he's lazy. He's not going to go out and he's not going to knock doors. What he's going to do is pull $1 million out of his 60 or 70 million that he's worth in the last 30 days and run commercials on TV saying, I'm a Bernie socialist and, I want people to have heat and air and shit. Yes, I do. I can't do that. Every dollar that I get is going to put organizing, like you said, messaging and people out into the field, because it's still the way you win races for us is you knock doors, and now that it is from Kentucky to Alabama, we got 7 major universities in this district. We got volunteers everywhere. We need to hire the organizers who can cut turf well, and go out, assist with the messaging and keep people out there and get them, fired up. Because voter turnout is very low, especially in Tennessee. I think we have the lowest in the country, But we're doing our due diligence to get the people out, because that's along with Republicans. Well, Republicans are being very arrogant and think they have this thing won. So in my district, if we can knock enough doors and get people scheduled, we'll come pick you up and go vote. We turn out high, they turn out like they normally do, which is not well. We win this race. and then we come one step closer to like shaping this country and how we see fit, because it's ours too.
Manpower is how you beat a machine. So you heard it here. Thank you, Odessa, for coming on the show. Everybody, you can join us again next week, next Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we are going to, again, be taking in our little drinky drink and kicking back with some political news for the week. This is Lourin signing out.